Hey, John, it's Kirk. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. All right. So I wanted to have you on. This is John Vaughn for the people listening. So I grew up in and still live in Massachusetts. John, you were part of I was like one of the 200 people that watched the Patriots when you were there before they became the Belichick Patriots.
Oh man,
I was in those metal seats at Foxborough Stadium on Rua. Isn't it wild? Like, before we get to the real stuff here, it must be crazy for you to watch what the Patriots have become. I mean, first of all, you were a great college back, and you had some good games with the Patriots. But I mean, when you were here, it was some lean times, huh?
Yeah. What, 6-10, 2-14?
Yeah, was that like the McPherson?
McPherson experiment.
And then who was Scarnecchia there for some of the games? And right?
Oh, Dante, yes.
Yeah.
He was my special teams coach and tight end coach.
Yeah. So I talked about this, John, I think last week. I was blown away by, shame on me, I knew a little bit, not enough. I was blown away by the Real Sports story. And I wanted to talk to you about it a little bit, just sort of your experience here with Dr. Anderson, who in maybe you don't feel this way, maybe you do. I feel like this is an amazingly underreported story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably going to end up as the greatest sexual abuse, rape, and cover-up in the history of sports. And it'll probably end up somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 victims.
So can you walk us?
The ones that come out.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you kind of walk the listeners? We talked about it on our show, but sort of the backstory here with Dr. Anderson.
So Dr. Anderson, Dr. Robert Anderson, actually started his career in medicine here at the University of Michigan as he was head of the health services. Mm-hmm. And during the Vietnam War, he was known as a doctor that would certify your son as a homosexual in order for you not to have to go off to war.
Right.
And then when he became the head of health services at the University of Michigan, got on campus in 1966. I think he became director of health services around 1968. And over the next 12 years, there were several different times in which students or student athletes complained about his inappropriate behavior. Mm-hmm. And then in between 1978 and 1980, he was fired, then rehired, and then there was a conspiracy between the powers that be in the athletic program as well as the office of the president to bury him, to limit their liability with the scholarship athletes.
In that letter, just so I can go backwards, because the story to me is incredible, and I apologize. Is it DeLuca? No, DeLuca. Who was arrested on
Tad DeLuca.
Yeah, in 1975, he wrote a letter, right?
Yes, 9-page letter.
Yeah, to the AD saying that something's wrong with this guy, right? Something's in. And what was going on, to be specific, is, he would digitally penetrate some of you guys and would also masturbate you, correct?
Yeah. So under the guise of medical treatment, at least this is what he would say to me: I need to do a testicular cancer exam, mm-hmm. As well as a prostate cancer exam, and they were all screenings to make sure you didn't have any of those two cancers.
And this is when you're a freshman, like right away?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
It started in my first physical.
Jesus. Yeah. So he does that.
So he does that, and when Tad wrote the letter in 1975, mm-hmm. he was. And then he also then gave it to his
Cunningham, is that right? His coach?
Yeah, his coach. And then he was stripped of his scholarship. Before the coach kicked him off the team, he read excerpts of the letter and ridiculed him in front of the team. And so he had to fight to get his scholarship back, but he never wrestled again. And then over the course of, he was at the University of Michigan from 1966 to 2003. In 1995, the university buys his private practice, and he goes on to retire in 2003.
How many times?
So
go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, but also during that time, he was an andrologist. So he was doing this study in andrology where he would take your sperm your freshman year, and he wanted to see, well, what he told athletes was he wanted to see what high-performance sports, how it had an effect on your sperm count. And so you would do that your freshman year and your outgoing senior year. Like I tell people, I shouldn't have had my first prostate exam at 18, and I shouldn't have had 49 more before I left when I was 20. So we had to see Dr. Anderson. There was nothing I never saw my childhood pediatrician once I got to the university. Any medical on the field or off the field medical issue, we had to see Dr. Anderson.
Was this something, and I know like when something like this is happening, you don't know because you have nothing to compare it to, but I'm just curious, was it ever something you were conversational about with your teammates, or was it something that you knew was just wrong and you didn't want to talk about it? Like when you were there, was it a topic of discussion?
So for me, my mother gets breast cancer almost simultaneously when Les Miles walks on my campus at my high school. Les Miles was the one that recruited me from Michigan, who also played for both. So Les is watching me deal with my mother going through breast cancer on my recruiting trip. Bo asked how my mother was doing, Bo Schembeckler. So the coaches knew that I had, my mother, because she couldn't come to the recruiting trip, knew that she had breast cancer. And then my first exam, when we went over medical history and things like that, Dr. Anderson made the comment, I see that, you have cancer and your mother has breast cancer, so you have cancer. So when he mentioned the word cancer, one, I was terrified. And two, naively, I didn't even know what a prostate was at 18. But what I did know is my mom has cancer. I definitely don't want cancer. And whatever it takes to get cleared to play at the University of Michigan is what I'm willing to do.
Sure.
So I never really thought about it.
Right.
And when I look back on those times, it was like going to the dentist. Nobody wanted to go to the dentist. But there were never any specific conversations that I had with other teammates. Guys just wouldn't want to go to them. And there was such a environment and a culture of toughness that, like Paul Schmidt would laugh, and he's now the associate athletic director, but he was a assistant trainer and then became head trainer, would laugh, would make jokes, take your medicine, da-da-da-da. Coaches would, threaten you to see Anderson, when they were gaslighting you or you injured or you hurt.
Right.
But I never had any specific conversations about the details that happened in that exam room until March the 26th of 2020.
Do you
feel
feel
that was 2 weeks to the day of my 50th birthday?
Was it something that you carried with you? Were you, in a way, did you feel shame about, what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that's how you should feel, but is it something that was in your mind for those 30 years that like or did you just bury it? Because people can do that,
I think, when you look at, as you progress through the levels in athletics, you learn how to compartmentalize whatever's going on in your life to perform on the field. And what I describe as this is the era that we played in at Michigan. I came in 88, with probably the best class in the history of this university, 5 straight Big Ten champions, Elvis Gerback, Desmond Howard, Steve Everett, Hudson, and all that. Mm-hmm. But we were in a constant state of being uncomfortable and trained to thrive in a sport that is organized chaos. So that's a duality, right? Like you were never comfortable, but you always could compartmentalize and focus on the task at hand. So nothing else mattered once you stepped in between the lines. And whatever you had to do to be able to practice, and it was all about becoming a Michigan man. And you don't just become a Michigan man in the games, you become a Michigan man in practice. And so you wanted to be there for your teammates. And so literally the hundreds of stories that I've, especially the football players that I've talked to, it was all the same thing. Like, one, I had the pressure of, I don't want to fail and go back home and be a failure, not only to my family, but my community. But also, I don't want to fail my teammates, and I don't want to fail the coaches. So that's all you concentrated on. So I never really thought about, like, emotionally how I was feeling during that time.
Yeah.
It was like a machine.
Yeah.
And then, and just recently, and it's already out there. So, like, it looks like I have thyroid cancer.
I was sorry to read that. Yeah. Yeah.
And
is that related, you think, to being afraid to go to the doctor, or?
Absolutely. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'm actually talking with Chuck Christian at the time when I discovered, because he was out here with me. And
who's also had cancer, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so in the conversation, I was just like, I think it's my lymph nodes. I'm going to get some antibiotics and just pump more of my, immunity and my vitamins. And, and he was like, John, don't be me. He's like, go see the doctor. And subconsciously, I didn't realize that I was justifying to myself, I don't really want to go to the doctors. I don't trust doctors.
Right.
And, now I'm in this terrifying situation of I have to go to the doctor. It was at 52 or 51 years of old. It was terrifying for me.
Sure.
And I couldn't realize and didn't understand why. And, then I talked to my therapist, and I started to realize that in the back of my mind, I buried everything that happened to Anderson, and I would just avoid going to the doctor. And then I love Chuck, but thank God I had his story and him telling me what happened during that 9 years, that if he had gotten, he could have found the cancer and got it treated 9 years early, he wouldn't be in the situation that he was in today. And so I definitely think, and that's the same story that I've heard with teammates that are, 5 or 6 guys have had prostate cancer. I think we've had 3 the survivors of Anderson die, during like the mediation period. And that is a story that is very, it's synonymous with a lot of guys that
they just
stopped going to the doctor.
Yeah, particularly that's where they were violated. I mean, that makes all the sense. It makes all the sense in the world. How many in total, to your knowledge, how many people, former Michigan athletes, have come forward now?
Oh man, I'm gonna to actually come forward.
Or in the hundreds, or
no? Well, as John Doe's,
sure,
or there's over 2,100 complaints right now.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And I just saw. Am I wrong that there's now a female complaint as well?
Yeah, there are several female.
Oh, there are more than one. Okay, yeah, because I saw it seemed like it was mostly.
And the interesting thing about that, and one that I know dearly, she was in the first class of Title IX, and the experiences of the female athletes that I've talked to, or other female patients, was a mental and a physical. Like, it was almost like he was angry because he had to see them. He would just say horrible things to them, which is so counter to what he would say to us, at least the football players and wrestlers.
Was he more gentle and sort of joking with you guys?
More gentle, more joking, which I guess, looking back is more sinister.
Oh, sadist. It's completely, totally.
Yeah. And so, but he was very rough and very disrespectful, of the females, critiquing their bodies, telling them that men wouldn't want them, just all kind of, like sadistic conversations within those exams. And then, with us, it was, he had this process, and it was to speed through the typical, blood pressure, pulse, all that, to get to the end. And the end was either one or the other or both: testicular cancer screening and prostate cancer screening exams. And I'm specific in my words because that's how he said it each and every time. There was never for me, I didn't know that exam was coming. It was, and I don't know if that's because cancer was in my medical history with my mother, but I also think that, he is, he's like a serial killer, but he was a serial rapist, and he honed his skills, and he honed his delivery to his victims in a way that, disarmed. And you have to understand this too. During the season, we couldn't have classes that ended after 1:00. And so you're trying to get down, get dressed, get your legs taped. If you have to see the doctor and get out to practice. And with Bo Schembechler, on time was 5 minutes early. If you were on time, you were late.
Right.
So you had all this pressure. So you literally were running through whatever you had to do to get out there on the field. And so it was really a sense of, this is a necessary evil, because I would say he was like the gatekeeper to clearing you to play.
Right.
And then who is now the associate athletic director, Paul Schmidt, was the gatekeeper to Anderson.
That's wild.
See Paul Schmidt, and then he would,
Wild Schmidt has a job still. Crazy. It's crazy. I can't.
Well,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But and then a bigger picture is this is like a syndicate of abuse on this campus, because Paul Schmidt did his residency under Strauss at Ohio State. And Larry Nassar did his student training at the University of Michigan in 1985. And now, knowing some Nassar victims, it's eerily similar how those two set up their homes with their private in the basement exam rooms for the victims.
So Nassar and Anderson crossed paths then in '85.
Absolutely.
That is mind blowing to think about. That
the conversations I've had, it's almost like he was a mentee of
he learned from
Anderson.
That's incredible.
Yes.
And I can't, and you obviously would know much better than I, but, growing up, being a big sports fan in the 80s, am I wrong in saying that Bo Schembechler was the most powerful guy in the state of Michigan?
No, you're not.
I mean, he was like Bear Bryant or Joe Paterno or, larger than life figure.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely. So if he, put it this way, if he had been proactive right away and said, fuck this asshole Anderson, you're out of here, like, he would have been gone in 2 seconds. He knew about it, obviously, and I know his son Matt has said that too. He knew about it and allowed it to happen forever.
Yeah, I mean, the ironic thing is, and you've got this, same type of situation at Penn State where you have this icon, but the university paid $11.9 million for a report, and it said that 24 individuals at different levels of the organization, including Bo Schembechler, knew and didn't do anything. Like, our beloved Michigan paid for this and proved that Bo knew, but yet us as victims are being attacked like we're the ones like attacking Bo's legacy. And I just want to clear that. I love Bo Schembechler. That doesn't mean that he was a perfect man. There are things that in one-on-one conversations or things that he taught me as a coach that I still instill in my life today. But bottom line is, this is an atrocity. And those that were responsible of turning a blind eye, enabled, empowered, and were complicit in, what is now 50 years of abuse, rape, and cover-up. Because the university doesn't even want to acknowledge their wrongdoing. The only thing that they've ever apologized, well, we're sorry that you had to endure or what Anderson did to you. Well, you empowered Anderson. You bought his private practice to own his records. There's literally no chain of custody for the 4 sperm samples that I had to give during my time at the university. While this man has a partnership with a fertility clinic in the building that his private practice is in. And he said it, I know, back in the late 70s, and to me one time, kind of jokingly, that he's also trying to figure out a way to create the perfect black athlete.
Yeah.
So the tentacles and the insidious nature of this, it goes well beyond local media. So I want to thank you for having me on, because more media outside of the Michigan market that are intimidated or bullied by Michigan in allowing access to get this entire story out, because it is.
I can't tell you, John. I was blown away. I told my producer right away after watching The Real Sports, I'm ashamed I didn't know more about it. It's. I'll talk about any time you want to have anybody on to talk about it. I'm happy to do it. It makes me so angry. And is President ever? Did he ever meet with you? I know you essentially set up a tent in front of his house for a few months, right?
Yeah, I'm still out here.
Oh, you're still there now? Oh, you're there right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still out here.
It's gotta be cold. Jesus.
Day 69.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is the only representatives that the university sends out here to talk to any of us that are here on any given day is the campus police.
Right.
Like a few different sergeants. And it is amazing to me how you've already, there's just enough collateral damage. Like at some point in time, we have to sit across the table as men and women, and the healing has to begin. But the disrespect and inhumane treatment is something that I never thought I would see from the University of Michigan.
Hey, where is, Harbaugh is older than you, right?
Yeah, Harbaugh is older than me.
But I presume you've known him for a long time. Where is he on this?
Well,
where's Tom Brady on this? Like, where are these people?
Basically Harbaugh discredited all of us, and the Bo he knows would have handled this before the sun went down and things of that nature, which to me were just asinine comments, because you were a captain and your teammates got raped. And I don't understand how, I get protecting the brand. But what's right is right and wrong is wrong. And, whether Bo knew or not is not, because Bo Schembechler was a head coach. Gary Moeller was a head coach. Lloyd Carr was a head coach. All of the athletic directors throughout that time. Bo was an athletic director when I got here. So the blood is on everyone's hands.
Yeah.
So it's not about singling out one person. It's about, we have a cancer within our athletic department that just because the man is passed doesn't mean that culture doesn't still exist. Because as long as you're covering up, it has, and ignoring, it has the ability to rear its ugly head again.
Well, and you have the assistant athletic director also was a big part of it, so it still goes on.
Well, and, Ward Manuel, who was a senior my freshman year, played for Bo. So he was here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's an unbelievable story. And like I said, if there's anything on our end, reach out to us if you want, and hopefully we'll talk to you down the line. And I'm glad you got your treatment early, and I hope you're going to be all right. I can't, I think the story's unbelievable. So we'll keep talking about it here for sure.
Absolutely. And I can definitely introduce you guys to Chuck Christian, because he's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. And he's in Massachusetts, right? Where we are.
Yeah. He lives up in Boston. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tad DeLuca as well, because, like I tell Tad, you were the only adult in the room in 1975 and 2018 when you wrote the letter that now is what started the dominoes. I mean, you realize one of the first things the university did after Tad sent them the letter in 2018, well, they hired Jeffrey Epstein's attorney.
Oh, right.
Like, it is amazing to me how they don't want to admit any wrongdoing, but everything they're doing is to limit liability. So if you don't have anything you're liable for, why take the actions and treat, Michigan alum like you're treating them?
No question. Again, thanks so much. And we'll definitely talk to you down the line. Thank you so much, John.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye. I think it's like the craziest unreported story ever.
I just don't understand. Wild. This keeps happening in these schools. Like this systemic way of they all hide. Right. It's.
I don't like playing the comparison game, but it's a larger total than Nassar. Just because of the years,
I saw 900.
Yeah, they've said it so. I mean, they say between 5,000 and 6,000 patients over those years. I mean, Dave, it's again, the crime's different, but when you talk to him, a lot, I feel like it's a lot of conversations we've had.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Did the Real Sports thing? I didn't watch that yet. Did that make the connection to Larry Nassar?
I shouldn't say no, but I don't remember that.
Wow.
Which is wild to think those two guys were
same state,
grooming him in 85.
But it must happen in others. This must be other colleges. We have Penn State, the two Michigan schools.
Of course.
That's the wild part. Dave sent me an interesting clip this morning, and I was watching it. And I guess they
didn't send it to me, but yeah.
This doctor, he got in trouble in the 70s, like you guys mentioned on the phone call, and they demoted him. But they basically said, "All right, well, we don't want you to treat any kids that have money. You just treat the scholarship athletes now."
Yeah.
And that must have been great for this guy, because all right, these are kids that are less likely to speak up.
They're not going to say a fucking word.
They have so much at stake. Yep. That's like giving candy to a baby. I mean, the way these schools protect these
predatory, with Catholic priests, they would find kids without dads.
Yeah.
It's nuts.